Inshallah, we're going to continue with this examination of some of the verses that Imam al-Ghazali determined were at the essence of the Quranic narrative. But before we do that, I wanted to introduce, many of you might know this dua, but it's a very beautiful dua. All the Prophet ﷺ supplications are beautiful, but this one has a particular just beauty to it that is really worth learning, and the Prophet ﷺ encouraged people to learn it. It's a dua that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal radiallahu anhu relates in his Musnad. And the dua is Allahumma, which is calling on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma inni abduka, wa ibnu abdika, wa ibnu amatika, nasiyati biyadika, ماض في حكمك عدل في قضاؤك أسألك بكل اسم هو لك سميت به نفسك أو أنزلته في كتابك أو علمته أحدا من خلقك أو استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك أن تجعل القرآن ربيع قلبي ونور صدري وجلاء حزني وذهاب همي. So, Sadaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So this dua is a dua that is used for the Quran, and there's a lot of secrets in this dua, but it begins saying there's an i'tiraf, there's an acknowledgement of your ubudiyyah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the fact that you not only are a servant of Allah, but you're the son of a servant of Allah, and you're the son of a maidservant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's an acknowledgement, getting back to that Quranic injunction on that to أَعْبُدُ رَبُّكُمْ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, that He created you and those who came before you. So we are in this chain of createdness. So I am your servant or your slave, the son of your servant, the son of your maidservant. نَاصِيَةِ بِيَدِكَ. The Nasiya is the forelock, traditionally. It's something that you control animals with generally. It's something that, but it's also, Allahu Alam, refers really also to the frontal lobe. This is really where the higher cognitive thinking occurs. And so that the Nasiya is in your hands. One of the in the traditional Muslim scholastic tradition, they had the tassels that came off the tarbush that you see in Western academia. That was actually to remind the sheikh when he graduated, they were given the tarbush with that tassel, which was like the Nasiya. And the idea was to remind them that that Nasiya is in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you give a hukum, a judgment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you should be aware that He could seize you at any time. So you should be very vigilant when you answer questions. I was once with Sheikh Abdullah ibn Siddiq. He was a great, great scholar, one of the truly great ulama of Mauritania of this time, rahimahullah. He was a student of Sheikh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti, and he, the famous Mufassir, he was from the tribe of Tajikanat. It's a famous tribe in Mauritania known for knowledge. In fact, the Mauritanians say al-ilmu jakani. Knowledge is from Tajikanat. But he was a brilliant scholar who was once, I was with him at the Sharia court in Abu Dhabi because I used to spend time with the muftis and with the Qudat, with Sheikh Ahmed al-Shaybani. I was very young, in my early 20s. But I remember these two men came from Egypt, and they wanted to ask a question in talaq, and it was a complicated thing. So Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah ibn Siddiq, who was he was muttaqi in his fatwa, he said, come back tomorrow and I'll give you an answer. And one of the Egyptians looked at me and he said, Da bi'arf haga? Like, does he know anything? Because they're so used to people answering immediately. So the idea that somebody actually wanted to think about it and was just completely uncommon for them. And I said to the man, هذا علامة, هذا بحر. So that reminder is very important, that we can be taken any time in our lives. مَاضٍ فِي حُكْمُكَ. Your judgment, your hukum, is what will occur, nothing else. In terms of my life, it's your hukum, whatever Allah has decreed. And He's al-Hakim and He's al-Hakim. So He's both the ruler, but He's also the wise. And that's both related to hukum. It's also related to the ihkam. In fact, we have, speaking of Nasiya, in the jokama or the hokama, if you Google this, you'll see it is actually a type of halter that's used to control the horse. And it comes from Hakima, because the Spanish got it from Andalusia, and then they brought it to the Americas. So it was a unique Arabian halter that's still used, people that know about horses. عَدْلٌ فِي قَضَاؤُكَ. Just is your judgment, what your qada. And there's khilaf about qadar and qada, which one is the pre-existent, which one is the one that's implemented in the world, but these are semantical differences largely. So the عَدْلٌ فِي قَضَاؤُكَ, whatever you have decreed for me is just. And the reason for that is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-adal. He cannot, his attribute is justice. He cannot be unjust. He's also ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, al-Ghafur, al-Wadud. He also has mercy. So these are two, they're not contradictory. They're working based, these attributes will manifest to us based on how we behave. If we're constantly demanding justice, then Allah will judge us by that accord. If we want forgiveness, if we're showing mercy to others, irhamu man fil ard yarhamkum man fis sama. Have mercy on those on earth, and the one in heaven will have mercy on you. Well, you could also say a'tilu biman fil ard ya'dirik man fis sama. Like, you be just with people on earth, and God will be just for you in heaven. So justice is important. It's a beautiful attribute of a ruler. But in human interactions between one another in a community, you want more mercy than you want justice. And there's a play by Shakespeare called The Merchant of Venice, which is about this conflict in Christianity between the Jewish trope of being a religion only of justice without mercy, and then the Christian being a religion of mercy that overrides justice. And so they're both important, but the point here is that whatever comes, it's going to be just. And this is about things that happen to you that you might not like. عَدْلٌ فِي قَضَاؤُكَ. So for whatever comes, we have to see it that Allah is, He is our Malik. And the Malik can do whatever He wants with His property. He can do whatever He wants, and you cannot claim that He's oppressed you or He's wronged you, because you belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So عَدْلٌ فِي قَضَاؤُكَ أَسَرْهُ بِكُلِّ اسْمٍ هُوَ لَكَ. I'm asking you with the isti'ana, or with the name, every name that is yours. سَمَّيْتَ بِهِ نَفْسَكَ, that you have called yourself. أَوْ أَنزَلْتُهُ فِي كِتَابِكَ, or that you have revealed in your book. Some of the ulama have worked out that there's about 121 names of God in the Quran. The 99 are the famous names that are related in the hadith. مَنْ أَحْصَاهَا دَخَلَ الْجَنَّةِ. But if you go into the ishtiqaqat names, like khadal, for instance, for yakhdul, and there's a khilaf about that, about words that Allah uses a verb, then can the name be taken out of that to give a name of Allah. So, but the actual names of Allah are unknown to us, the number. أَوْ عَلَّمْتُ أَحَدًا مِّنْ خَلْقِكَ, or you taught anyone from your creation. And some of the ulama derive from this that even people that aren't prophets might be given a name that is Allah reveals to them. أَوْ اسْتَأْثَرْتَ بِهِ فِي عِلْمِ الْغَيْبِ عِنْدَكَ, or it's a name that you have kept hidden inside this unseen realm. So you've kept it for yourself. So you're asking through all of these for what? أن تجعل القرآن, and it's often recited, أن تجعل القرآن العظيم ربيع قلبي, the spring of my heart. Which means that which brings my heart to life. إن الله يحيي الأرض بعد موتها. Allah brings the earth back to life after it's dead. There are spiritual deaths of the heart, but just like that, you can have a type of defibrillation. You can have a cardioversion, a spiritual cardioversion. So in medicine, when somebody's heart stops, or if they go into like a type of ventricle fibrillation, it's very dangerous. They can do this cardioversion where they basically introduce electricity, which is energy, into the heart to get it to back to its normal rhythm. Well, like that, there's spiritual cardioversion. Allah can literally take a dead spiritual heart, and I'm saying literally, and bring it back to life. And there's a beautiful, one of the most extraordinary hadiths, in my estimation, is a hadith of Ubay ibn Ka'b, when he actually had momentary doubt. This is called a khatir. So he's not doubting, because he was a believer. But he actually heard some people, and this is in Imam al-Bukhari's collection of the Sahih. He heard some people reciting the Quran, and it was different from the way the Prophet ﷺ had taught him. And he's one of the great Quran reciters, Ubay ibn Ka'b. So he hears it, and then he hears another one, and it's different. And he said, where did you get that reading from? They said, the Prophet ﷺ taught us. So he takes them to the Prophet, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, these men are reading the Quran different from the way you taught me. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, Iqra, and he told them. And they recited, and he said, that's the way I taught them. Like it came down like that. And then Ubay ibn Ka'b, when he said that, he said it came to him some doubt in his heart. And it's very clear in the commentaries that this is not doubt of iman. It was like a khatir that came into his heart. It was from Iblis. It was waswasa. And this is very important. There's a very important distinction between waswasa and between your own inner, what's called hadithun nafs. Hadithun nafs and waswasa are two different things. So you can have thoughts that are very foul, that are horrible, that you don't like. These, you should see them, and I mentioned this earlier, Dr. Cleary talked about the uninvited guest and the host. You have to distinguish between the thoughts that are uninvited into your heart. They just come in as uninvited guests, and you have to dispel them. And so he had this, and then he said the Prophet saw what had come over him, like some kind of a spiritual state, and he struck him in his chest. And he said, it was as if I saw God before me in complete awe. And it's extraordinary hadith. Like he suddenly had like an enlightenment. And he's one of the most important people for transmitting the Quran. But the Prophet did a type of, like a type of cardioversion, a spiritual cardioversion on him, which is quite stunning. The Prophet ﷺ also, a man once came to him complaining about his heart, and the Prophet put his hand on his heart, and he said, Innaka maf'ud, you have some heart trouble. And he said, go to Al-Harith ibn Kalada, who was the great Yemeni physician who'd studied in Jundashapur in Iran with the traditional, he studied in the medical school in Persia. So he was one of the few Arab doctors. So the Prophet, I think, was like he was doing like a echocardiogram with his hand, and then referred him to the specialist, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In any case,